Welcome, Levi.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, it is absolutely our pleasure. We'll come on to the Dragon's Den part of the story because that's such a key element. Come on to that shortly, and then talk about where the business is subsequently. But I want to just take you back to when you were thinking about this, and I know success was, quite some long time in coming. How much of your success was planned, or at least envisaged, and how much was happenstance?
I would say it's about half and half. I would say a lot of it was planned because I had time to plan. I began my journey while I was at Her Majesty's pleasure, serving a very long-term sentence, and realized that was the opportunity for me to get rid of the old me that had led me down that path to be where I was. And the change started there, to recognize that there is something else beyond, that person who not even I liked myself in those days. And the change, the change which wasn't planned was the coming out and seeing how people accepted a product that I only believed in. And a lot of people didn't believe in, but the mainstream customers that I took it to, or I went to the shires to find my customers. Anyway, that I had shire at the end of it. That's where I ended up with the sauce for a long time. And that's where I found out that mainstream people wanted a Caribbean sauce, and they believed in this product as I did. So it's just a matter of two. One is, as I said, is that moment of knowing that you've had to change, and you've done that because you've gone through the pain of that change and the metamorphosis of what that is to become who you are. But then you go out and then you're really relying upon people. Oh, that's just people's opinion of you. And I think that's the lucky part for me, that people felt that it was okay for me to sell a sauce with a Rasta man and the old Rastafarian concept and the Jamaican and all that into a bottle and accept it.
That is amongst the most profound changes that perhaps many entrepreneurs have ever had. Your phrase "serving Her Majesty's pleasure," the deep contemplation that you had at that time and desire to change yourself essentially. That's very deep and profound. Was there a particular catalyst to that, or was it as a realization that you wanted to completely move on from that stage in your life?
Well, I think the catalyst was that you have to admit that you're not right. Whatever you are is not right. I'm not saying that about whether you're guilty or not. That's something else. You have to admit to yourself that the path that you are taking is not the right one. How you've ended up where you are, and you wasn't a success. And by then I was in my late 20s, going into my 30s. I wasn't a success. So I'm not saying that whether or not what got me there, whether I was guilty or not, but I was guilty of failure in life. And that's where I felt that the change needed to be. And without being in that position where I was, I wouldn't have had the concentration and the know-how and the admittance as well too, the admittance that you are wrong. I wouldn't have done that to my own self when I was out in the street with my friends doing everything that I was doing. But it's that time that you've got to go into yourself and look at the bits that you yourself thought that was fine, not what others would criticize. The most important thing is what you think of yourself, is that self-admission. And I had the time then to see that and to admit it. And I think that was a catalyst to admit it. That made me want to change and then to go through the process of that change.
It's extraordinary candor from you, and I'm sure everyone watching us will find that incredibly admirable. And I suspect that many entrepreneurs will think that whilst they haven't had that same story, that sense of reliance on self, understanding yourself, and working out what you most want to do, I guess, is at the heart of what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when that time comes when you're faced with your own frailties in front of you and everything is stripped bare, There is no turning back. There's nothing but truth toward yourself. And that's the great opener. That's the door for you to step into the new you. And I wanted to leave Keith Graham behind, because Keith Graham to me has always been a Scottish fellow, and I wasn't that. I wasn't Scottish at all. And I used to think that because I didn't identify with this new life that I wanted to have as a Rastaman, that I'd found myself as something else. And I found that, if you're a Rastaman, you're not a Keith. And so you've got to have that change of being who you are. And I had to find the me, and it was that process that helped me to find that, I was this, I wanted to be a musician, and I wanted to feel like the real me. And when I found that, the name was Scottish and it was all through slavery and that sort of stuff, I just thought I had to change and to be me. And to accept me as Levi Roots myself was easy, really, because I felt like I was me, like a musician, as a person that loves to cook and to try to merge those two things together.
Yeah. So in that next period of your life, you had the sort of twin track almost. You had the musician, you're a performer, which I guess both is born of self-confidence, but reflects a self-confidence as well. You'll have learned from that. But also then creating the sauce, and for many years selling at Notting Hill Carnival, but not really. I mean, great, but not really a sort of formal success. Your offer wasn't really picked up. Why do you think that was?
Well, it was what I was talking about. It's because I was always just trying to sell the food. I wasn't proud of the me. I didn't merge the two together. All those years at the carnival and all those years selling the sauce before success was just trying to sell the food. It was the confidence of realizing that I could be me, and I could represent, who I was. I couldn't have been me locally. And that's why the sauce wasn't a success when I first tried it to sell it locally in my local area. People saying to me, no, Levi, don't sell us a bloody sauce. Sell us music. We love you for that. We know you for that. But don't try to sell us something that we can make at home ourselves, because it's a Caribbean area. And that rejection was me saying to myself, okay, I knew the sauce was good because people liked it at the carnival when I did it, but I was perhaps doing it for the wrong market. So I had to go out there and find the market, to be able to be able to do that. So it wasn't of changing the product, but it was find the market that would accept me as a Rastaman, telling the story of the sauce and my grandmother and the music and Rastafari and all that. That the exception of that was for me was saying, okay, it was okay to be me, and went forward that the brand eventually became Levi Roots and not Reggae Reggae Sauce, which was brilliant.
And you had that fantastic break in 2007, sort of a happenstance. I think it was a researcher that spotted you somewhere and invited you onto Dragon's Den. And your kids said, just don't do it. But nonetheless, you did. So why did you do it? I mean, obviously, we can look at the success and see, well, that's why you did it. But in that run up to it, did you think, bloody hell, I mean, is this right for me?
Well, I'd always loved the challenge, and I think the challenge of taking the sauce away from local and taking it to the Shire's total new market for me was a challenge. And I found that people liked it in that sort of way. So challenges was something that I love to overcome. So I'd never seen Dragon's Den, never heard of it. But when I was asked to do it, it felt like a challenge because everyone was saying to me, don't take the guitar. When I got home and told my kids that, I'd been offered to go on the show and, I didn't know what it was, they were telling me that I had to look up the show at least to see that it's a show about business and enterprise and not X Factor with me with a guitar. But I wanted to overcome that challenge because people were saying that, that I should be looking it up and see Peter Jones and see how horrible he can be and how Duncan doesn't invest and Deborah doesn't invest, all that kind of stuff. So I decided not to look at the show at all, not to get it into my head about what Dragons Den was about. My concern was all I wanted to do is a good performance of the song. I wasn't worried about the sauce because I knew that was good because I'd sold it for years before that. But it was just, again, the doubt of myself, hoping that my performance would be accepted by these five investors. So going that way was the challenge of people saying, don't be you. Don't be the natural you with your music. Pretend to be someone else, which I was thinking that is easier to be me. I want it to be easy. I didn't want to, go without, my comfort blanket, which is my guitar. When I have that, it feels like the Levi Roots that I tried to transform myself into when I was, in prison back in the day. And here I was now with my moment had come when I really had to express this new me. So I wasn't going to put that challenge down just because people are saying to me, don't be you. I wanted to be me. And that's why I went with the guitar.
And I think there's some really sort of good and sort of implicit advice there to other entrepreneurs. Take challenges, test yourself, be authentic. No, and so anyone watching this, looking at potential investors or term sheets and advisors and so on, absolutely be yourself, because that's what people will be buying if they're buying it, I guess. For all that, you came on brilliantly serenaded and fairly swiftly got 3 rejections. And you must be thinking, oh, come on, what's happening here? But you then got 2 successes and you were away. 50 grand for 40%. Your life changed on a dime that very moment. What was that like?
Boy, it was absolutely amazing. It was the dream come true moment, like we see in films, at all times, that you failed so much in your life that you got so much used to failure that in the end, you've turning around failure into a positive, because failure back then had become now to me as feedback, because I had so many failures now. I knew how not to do it. So when I eventually met someone like Peter, and Peter explained to me that he was invested in me, not the product, for me, that was a license. And again, to prove that, yes, it's fine to be who you are, because that's what people are going to buy into. So to answer that question, it was a vindication of everything that you've ever thought when people were saying to you, don't do it. Don't be yourself, be someone else. Don't do the things that you love, because that won't work. And for me, it was that moment of saying, yeah, I've merged my 2 passions. The only 2 things that I wake up in the morning and thinking that, yeah, I'm ready to do is some cooking or some music. There ain't anything else to me. And here I was now merging these 2 together and got the investment from someone like a Peter and getting that magical hug from him after Dragons Den and after singing the song. It was an absolutely amazing moment.
It was absolutely amazing. And looking at the dates, it's an extraordinary whirlwind. So the exact dates, as I gather these, February the 7th, 2007, you went on Dragons Den. Yeah. February the 9th, Sainsbury's confirmed interest in stocking. March 7th, which is, a month later, went on sale nationwide. And initially, Sainsbury's thought it might sell 50,000 bottles a year, actually sold between 40 and 50,000 in the first week. What was it like being you in that month and the weeks immediately afterwards?
It was amazing. It really was. As I said, it's a dream come true. TV companies calling, newspapers, articles, everything, families and friends and people that you hadn't seen for years. All of a sudden, you're out there. Mm-hmm. And it was a magical moment. It really was. But the best thing, for me was to see the smile on my mother's face, because she had carried me literally back throughout all those problems that I mentioned. When I was a kid coming through at school, I came to this country at the age of 11 and couldn't spell my first name, which, as we know, only had 5 letters, Keith. At the age of 12, I couldn't even spell that. And it was her that sort of saw me through all this journey after missing my grandma, who brought me up, up until then. And I thought that, I'd come to this new country and leave grandma behind and I wouldn't get any love. And my mom picked up that love, and she's been fantastic right up throughout the whole journey. So for that moment, to call her up after Dragons then and to tell her, Mom, I've done it, I've slayed the dragons. That's the biggest memory of all for me when it comes to that moment of what's happening with this thing. But of course, outside of that, the magical thing was something was happening for the Caribbean community, and that was much bigger than even myself and everything else to do with, everything. Here was people were seeing something that they thought was going to be a fantastic idea and a success. And it was for them. And it was getting that love from them as well, too, in your own community. That was the absolutely most amazing thing for me. So, yeah, it was a magical moment.
And for anyone watching this, the idea of going from essentially a sort of domestic business where you would cook and bottle with your family at home and then sell it to typically Notting Hill Carnival to this massively ramping business. Did you have to sort of again remake yourself and you became a businessman, a more formally structured person, or how did you navigate that part of it personally, the transition from a home business to a massively scaling business?
I like to think that my time within the music business, for many years before that, helped me in those moments of being, all of a sudden you're literally no one to become, right in front of everyone's face. I think that those experiences with me really helped me to track to my way through that. And as well as having someone like Peter, who, as an investment, he was a different animal to what Richard was, because I ended up having two investors. I've always said that, Richard is fantastic because he was the first one that spotted the opportunity. But I think that he had invested in the sauce, which was great at the time. He saw the opportunity for that. But on the other end, Peter invested in myself, in Levi Roots. So with that relationship, it really helped me right throughout the whole process of what was happening with the fame and everything, and also the negative bits that was coming through as well too, because that comes with the fame as well too. And I think having a role model like him and somebody who believed in me as the person and not just being there for the business and the money, as how most people would think an investor would be. They're not there to help you with your personal things. They're there because they want a return on their investment. But yeah, I had this fantastic role model in a 6'7" tall dragon that was really enjoying this moment between the both of us building this business together. So I remember when we were in Sainsbury's, actually, for the first time to make that first order from Justin King, chief of Sainsbury's. That was the moment for me when I knew that this was going to now be something absolutely amazing. And the relationship between Peter and I is going to be a lasting one for a very long time. It was those moments, because we got the news back after that we were out selling Heinz tomato ketchup. And I don't think there could ever be a Caribbean product, a sauce product, that will ever do that again. So those moments with that partnership that we formed together has been the making of the brand.
That's brilliant. As very, very generous of you to say that, and I know you've cited Peter as the key influence in terms of business. Let's talk about him specifically as a mentor, but the principle of mentoring as well, because it was a sort of personal business development, I guess, that he was helping you with. How did it work in practice?
Yeah, I think with mentor, the key thing is for them is to have time for you. It's not about anything else, because if they are going to be your mentor, then they would see something in you that they think that you'll be able to sort of make your way anyway. And they just help to fit the bits and bobs together. But when you have somebody who becomes a bit more than that into your business, then it helps you even more, because then he'll take out his little black books and makes a few calls here, there, and wherever you want to. And I think that was the key for Peter and I. He'd known Justin King. He was one of the numbers that he had in his book. And he rang Justin and said to Justin, well, did you see Dragons then? Can I bring Levi along to see you? But at that moment, your mentor has to be comfortable that you will be able to swing the deal. Once you get in the room, because all he can do is to open the door for you. So just going back to how did I manage to do that? It was my experience that I had back in the day as a musician, and also my principle as a Rastaman. I've hastened to have that, because that has a lot to do with your thinking Even from when I was a young musician going through, you had to deal with contracts and deal with other people and that. And it's the sort of people that you were mentoring around that sort of helped you to be able to focus. So I do think my life back then, sort of helped me to be able to focus when this fame came overnight. You're in the middle of it, in the thick of it. There's no room for failure. Then you have to dig into your past to help you within the present. And it was that helped me to merge that relationship between Peter and I, and it became stronger. Because as I says, he'd now become much more than just a owner of 20% of the brand. He was now a part of the whole Levi Roots ethos, and that bonded the relationship.
I mean, it is an extraordinary happenstance. I mean, for you at the time, you as a quite life experienced, storied individual, you'd have been in your late 40s, perhaps early 50s, and you weren't that young kid straight out with some fantastic idea. But the opportunity was there because it was enhanced via mentoring. So I want to just pick up that mentoring point. You're clearly an amazing role model, particularly for Black entrepreneurs. How much have you personally been involved in mentoring as well as inspiring other entrepreneurs?
I never really see myself as a mentor, really, because I think a mentor job is to really be close, with your mentees and actually help them to make that call and to piece their business plan together and to be really close. What I think my role is more of an inspirator. I like to think. I think the only thing that I have to have, mentors have much more. They will give you the numbers, and people will know that is not what I do. That is not how the Levi Roots brand. I think how the Levi Roots brand run, it is about yourself and about who you are as a person. I think integrity teaches a lot about who you are as a businessman also. So I think I like to think of myself as how people are inspired by my story. And when I tell my story, I hope it will motivate and inspire them to do better. And then the mentors will help them to piece the business together. That's how fairly I see myself, because I do think motivation is key within business. Because you have to be motivated to want to go beyond that call of that first part of the business when it fails and you've not got the money and everything feels like crap, and most people is telling you go back and do the street job and that sort of stuff. It's what brings you beyond that, to rise yourself above that. And that's what a real motivation can do. And sometimes I hope that's what my story do when I tell it to young people.
And I mean, clearly you're very financially successful. It's an extraordinary business achievement. To your point about authenticity and in personal integrity, have you found any challenge that fame and wealth and so on can actually distort, can take you away from being the grounded individual that you were? What advice would you give for those looking to address that?
It's a very touchy subject. Well, I think most people will know that. What was it? 5 years after Dragon's Den, when I thought everything was absolutely amazing and fantastic, and as I said, the stories are all brilliant, and the money is running in and everything is fine. And all of a sudden, when you think all is safe, then bang, a spanner comes in the works, and I was sued for a whole load of money, and a whole load of stuff was happening in the press about my life and all that kind of stuff. And the whole thing seems like it's about to absolutely crash. And as you know, when that happens, most of the people that were holding you up then started to feel shaky, and you yourself feel like you're falling down the ladder because they're not holding you up as much as they are. But then it's always that moment of what people say about surrounding yourself with like-minded people, comes into play. Because when it comes to the final people that are holding you up, it will be those like-minded people that you find out there. And there are two key like-minded people I say all young business has to surround themselves with, because that's what I did. And they are a lawyer, a legal person, and an accountant. And without that, no business really is going to go pretty much far if you don't have good advice from those two departments. And when my spanner was throwing the works and I got sued and everything feel like it was coming down, it was those two aspects of business that actually kept me up. I had a really fantastic lawyer, a corporate lawyer, Teja Picton Howell. He's been a savior for me throughout the whole business, and which teaches me now to say to young people, get these two people in place, or get advice from people. You can never do without that advice. I never skimp on finance, and never skimp on legals as well too. And I think with those two armory in any business, it helps you to get over those process of failure. It did me anyway, because I never expected to go through that process when everything was going absolutely fantastic. But that is business, and you just have to be prepared for it.
It's very clear, strong, practical advice that entrepreneurs tend to be brilliant at the thing they're brilliant at, and perhaps less familiar with maybe legal and financial. So therefore, bring it in. It's a key skill that you don't have. Okay, there's many people who do have it. So the role of advisors, we talk quite a bit at EntreConf about that. It's vital, whether it's in terms of IP at the beginning or disputes. By the way, we should say that you did that dispute case was thrown out, wasn't it? So you won that case and moved on. And however traumatic, which it will have been, that process, the businesses radically continued to grow. So tell us about that. Tell us about maybe a typical day for you. What Levi, what do you actually do on a sort of day-to-day basis?
I play my guitar. It's never far. It's actually just there. Again, it's about the brand of what you make the brand. The brand is me. So again, I like to say we have over 50 products on the brand. I don't have any factories or anything like that. The key thing for us is the brand. We're an outsourcing brand. But the key thing is that you have to make the brand be, something that big company will want to have an association with. And we are lucky that we are at the front of Caribbean food. And when we say Caribbean food to a company like, for instance, Association of British Royal Foods, one of the biggest companies out there, they will want to take on one of the smallest companies out there, like Levi Roots is Reggae Reggae Sauce Limited, because we are at the front of something with this niche. And that's how we've survived. So the key thing for me is it is about the brand, and the brand is about what I am. And there's no pretense. I just have to just be me. And I think that's what sells that honesty of who you are. So it's not for, me in an office every day chipping away at numbers over computers and that sort of stuff. It's me going into schools, universities, wherever there are young people, prisons. I've visited nearly every prison in this country so far over the past 15 years. University, school, wherever there are young people, that's my job, is going in and telling that same story that if I can do it, then surely that if you have the same focus as well, then you can do it. So, it's for me, it's an enjoyment thing as well too, because I enjoy doing that. But again, as I said, if that can motivate someone else to make a change and to change their business and to become a success, for me, that's a job done.
It's a job done, and you do it in a number of different ways. For example, looking at your TV roles and appearances, you've been in Death in Paradise, Comic Relief, Celebrity Mastermind, Big Brother. You absolutely are that brand. You've inhabited a personal brand. Whilst it's unlikely that will be available to others, do you think it's an option for entrepreneurs to become the personal brand of their product? Is that a useful way of looking at it?
Yeah, I mean, you won't get to the level of perhaps, as you just mentioned, doing all those fantastic stuff and that. But I do think it is about choice, what you do, however small your choices are. You still have to make some choices and take some out and don't do all. And that's been a magic of how I think I've managed to survive as well, because it's not every opportunity, fantastic ones that I do come our way that I grab onto. Again, that integrity of that honesty of what people are buying into is the first thing that you have to think about when those opportunities start flooding in, that you are true to your own self and to your brand. It's difficult sometimes when some opportunities will come big, but I do think you have to have some sort of ethos of to follow that, when you make a decision, it's based upon these, this strap line or whatever you want to put in place. I've always used that Shakespeare analogy, and I'm sure you probably hear me say it all the time. The tide in the affairs of man, taken at the floods, will lead to fortune. All the days of your lives could be deemed in shallows and in miseries. and you have to take the current when it serves, and that's what an entrepreneur is.
Yeah, spotting those tides and those changes in currents. And a different form of opportunity for you. You were invited to become the chair of St. Paul's Carnival. What's your involvement, and why are you involved with it?
That's amazing. Isn't that amazing? I started off by sauce selling at carnivals.
Yeah.
St. Paul's Carnival was one of the first ones that they used to sell the original Reggae Reggae Sauce at, and to be asked many years later to sit and do the people's work, it's an absolutely amazing thing for me. As chairman, I think again what I bring as chair is that motivational factor, because they do have a fantastic team there at St. Paul's Carnival CIC. The team is just absolutely been brilliant, and for me it's just going in and trying to add something else. But if my fame and my know-how can bring something a bit extra to this great institution as a great carnival like St. Paul's, then for me it's just something that I was made to do. So when I was asked to do it, I just wanted to add my bit to it. So it's just been brilliant trying to engage with people at St. Paul's. I know how passionate they are about their carnival, because I've been going there for years and years. So yeah, it's just been an enjoyment, getting involved with the team there so far, and making decision about this year's celebration, which is called Backyard. Not a full-blown carnival, as I would have liked to do, but going in as chair, all of a sudden I got to realize how difficult it is for any carnival to raise the money and to put a carnival on, much less at the time of when COVID at first, and then Omicron I did last year, and it was in the middle of Omicron that I was in as chair, and we had to make that decision about what do we do for 2022 carnival. And I think safety was one of the key things that we had to think about. So we thought of doing something a little bit more scaled down, Backyard, which is about local community and about inclusivity and diversity within the community. Not one that we're inviting all on sundry like we would normally do for a carnival. But I think it's good when we say concentrate on local people this year because of safety. And then next year, I think it would be a point where we can look into have a normal St. Paul's Carnival.
Yeah, the backyard sort of approach this year. There's multiple different events. People can pay, £1 is easy enough, but anything more than
whatever they choose to pay.
Whatever they choose to pay, which is really cool. We're towards the end of our time, Levi. Unfortunately, we could talk for ages. I've got two last questions for you. One is about the business. One's more personal. So, what do you think the destiny of the business is? If Ben and Jerry's can sell to Unilever, is your business going to be sold on at some point?
Oh, I don't get asked that question much.
Oh, come on.
To be truthful, again, I say this because I teach this, to young people as well. You've always got to have a number that you would accept for your business. It's never one that you say you want to hold on to it forever. I don't believe that within business. But I don't think when it's a family business, like where it is for me, it just creates that slightly different options for you when you're thinking of sell out or sell on. So I think for me, the Levi Roots name will always be associated with the family. But, I think, like I've just said, if that offer comes in or that moment comes in, it's one that, like any business person, that I would have to think seriously about.
Yeah, that's another very candid answer. And I'm sorry if you've been asked that a gazillion million times. You may also have been asked this question, which is, with your life story, the events which you've touched on so openly, the success you've had, the scale and so on, what actually motivates you now inside the business?
Wow. I think there's lots more Levi Roots around. I think there's always been. I've always said that Peter Jones never turned me overnight. I was always me, just waiting for someone like him to pass through my local area and to believe in me when I was back then as a young musician, or even when I was making the sauce in the early days. But nobody like that would ever pass through where I live in Brixton, South London. Just like many young people now in their housing estates, and they've got a passion to do something, but nobody's going to spot them, and says that you have the opportunity. If there's a legacy for me, I'm hoping that will be the one that says, if you work hard enough, you will be spotted. but it will be you, the investment comes in because you are good enough, not because of where you come from. Anyone can be an entrepreneur. It doesn't belong to anyone. Anyone can be it.
Anyone can be an entrepreneur. That's a great note to finish on. I found this sort of hugely inspirational. The energy that just comes off the screen from you, the sheer success, of course. On behalf of EntreConf, to Levi Roots, founder of Reggae Reggae Sauce, and so much more. Thank you ever so much for this EntreConf interview. Thank you, Levi. Thanks.